Work, a lot of work, a lot of work. I put in work, a lot of work. Got on my grind to make it work. I put in time to ease my mind. Now all the time I see dollar signs. I got the juice and barbecue. Yeah, I keep making moves, cause I know what to do, I put in work.
Audience, but as Kaveh, I want to know from you, for any aspiring entrepreneurs in the room, what advice would you kind of give starting your company, and how will you infuse that into a mentor, somebody else who's really looking to really get into the spirits industry or just start a company in general?
I think the first thing you got to realize that entrepreneurship is contact sport. I mean, it's just, I don't know how else to say it, it's just contact sport. You're gonna get bashed left and right. And I can't tell you how many nights I was on my hands and knees praying to anybody who would listen. Because, you know, I pretty much put everything on the line. And you know, I had 3 little kids, and we didn't know if we were gonna make it or not. And that's a different sensibility, right? That's not for everybody. So you got to recognize what your tolerance level is, and especially if you happen to be in a partnership, you got to realize what the partnership is able to sustain. Because I was fortunate enough to have a wife that was able to tolerate it. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy, but she was able to kind of ride it out with me. And then even once we got going, there's a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. So that's the piece that I think is something a lot of folks are not ready for. And you got to realize it. It's like, it is contact sport. You're going to get bashed, and you got to be ready to get back. But if you have that mentality, you have a vision, and to your point, what you made earlier is that you see the opening in whatever industry it is, and you see it. You've done your homework. It's there. Then you got to just put your back behind it and go all in.
Man, I love that. That's a great piece of advice. And just to kind of close out from our end, I want to give you the floor. Are there any particular initiatives or upcoming projects at Rabbit Hole that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, actually, you know, there's 2 projects that are happening. You know, one of the things it's I don't know how many people know about this, but about 4 years ago, we partnered up with Pernod Ricard. Pernod Ricard is the 2nd largest spirit company in the world. At the time, once we got the distillery going, and because it was such a unique brand and this unique distillery, we had a lot of big companies knock on our door. And I pretty much said no to all of them, with the exception of Pernod Ricard. And the reason is that I felt that there was a cultural fit. And that cultural fit was in part related to that entrepreneurship, because the CEO of Pernod Ricard is a gentleman named Alex Ricard. His grandfather started the company. His grandfather, very much like me, started from scratch. And what I felt was that DNA is still deeply rooted in the company. And one of the things that Alex said to me very early on, which I really appreciated, he's like, listen, Kaveh, we know how to do Absolute Watermelon, Jameson Orange. We don't know how to do Rabbit Hole. And believe it or not, I talked to probably half a dozen large companies. None of them got that. None of them got it, because they wanted to come in. You've got an idea, you got a company that's like at a certain point, they want to just pluck it and get you out of here, or get you to be like a guy who just walks around, shakes hands, and kisses babies. And I didn't want that. So basically the conversation led to the point that I said, listen, I want 2 things. He said, okay. I said, 1, I want to make sure with your help that Rabbit Hole becomes one of the next big, great American whiskey brands. So we need that distribution, we need the sales, we need that part of it. The second piece, don't put any handcuffs on me. And he said, what do you mean? I said, listen, I have this mantra that says, just shoot me if I only have one idea. I've got a bunch of other ideas, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to just languish, because I'm gonna wither away. I'm a restless soul, and I like to create different things. Long and short of it, I said, listen, when the time comes, I got a few other ideas. I'd love to be able to kind of see what we can do with it. And sure enough, last year I was in Paris, and I pitched to him 4 different new brands, completely new brands. Really? And he wanted to do all of them. So we decided to do 2 out of the 4 just to get going. There's another bourbon brand that's getting launched next month, and there's a flavored whiskey that's getting launched this summer. You know, it's a testament to the relationship. It's that faith and building that relationship, because, you know, 3 years, 4 years later, he knows that what kind of person I am, I know what kind of person he is, and the beauty of it is that I do the work. They've got deep pockets, so I don't have to go hit the road and collect cash.
Right.
And we're able to do some cool things.
That's exciting. Really good to hear that. I'm really excited to hear that. All right, any questions? Do we have any questions in the room?
I have a question. Thank you for your story. My name is Vanessa Williams Harvey. I'm the founder and CEO at Dues 24. As a new entrepreneur who is beginning to venture out into the funding arena, and I'm a registered nurse by profession, so I get your clinical background. And business is something very new to me, so it's a new language. How did you capture your first investors? I believe I heard you say you had over 100 investors, which that's kind of phenomenal and overwhelming. But how did you capture your first initial investors, if you can give some advice to someone?
Yeah, I had about 110 investors, and collectively raised $18 million from 110 investors. It was really hard, and the first round and the earliest rounds were the hardest. I think the biggest thing that I had to do is to show basically not only the idea has traction, but also we have, in our case, I had to show that there's assets in place. So the contract that I mentioned earlier was probably, at the time, one of the most valuable things that I created, which was going out there, showing the investors that I actually have a long-term contract to produce bourbon at a certain cost, which was really important. I also had to make the investment and purchase the property that the distillery ended up coming in. So there was that initial investment that was all basically out of pocket that kind of gave comfort to those guys that I've got skin in the game. You know, the main thing that investors want to know, particularly of people that don't have any experience and have never been, you know, through something like, in this case, creating a brand, they want to know if you have skin in the game. So that skin in the game was really a big selling point. And it just kind of, I built it from there. I also had to put a team together because, you know, not a whole lot of people will say, all right, I'm going to write you a check. I'm going to write a check to a guy named Kaveh, who's a psychologist who has never made a drop of whiskey and never started a brand. So I had to put a team together. And that was an interesting process too, because, you know, there was a lot of mistakes that were made there. I think if I can give some advice, is to be really thoughtful about that part of it, because what I had to do was also to give up part of the company at points and shares here and there, some of those folks, and some of those folks were really helpful, and some of them were scoundrels. I mean, there was just no way to put it, just absolute scoundrels. And it's one of those things where you kind of live and learn. Going back, I can say that, you know, it was a necessary part of the process, but at the same time,
I enjoy having kind of more diverse and then becoming grateful to be kind of at the cusp.
And I had like this 65-year-old son.